Manchester City host Chelsea at the Etihad this weekend in the season's first title race-shaping clash. And even now, the early signs are that Chelsea will face a tougher battle this time around.
And so, today for Chelsea, May becomes history. Champions League! 22 minutes into the start of their defence. 1-1! And the champions are pegged back at home. Their one-goal lead quickly re-established. The dread, high drama on the bridge. Touré, and it's spun in. Back to Touré, beautifully worked. Super goal. He's made that count. And City have guided themselves to the top of the first Premier League table.
Yes, hello there, and a very warm welcome to a very special Football Today, the first of this kind of the season in which we focus on one game. This weekend, Sunday at the Etihad, a huge clash between the top two from last season, a game that could see Manchester City some 5 points clear of the reigning champions of England, or it may not, as the case may be. We're here to discuss that today. The we in question, well, the former Chelsea and England manager Glenn Hoddle is with us. Glenn, good to have you here. And next to him, we have got a man who was the leading goalscorer 4 seasons in a row for Manchester City, scoring more than 100 goals in his time there. Sean Gota is here as well. Gentlemen, great to have you here. Glenn, first things first, for the purposes of this show, we're looking at a heavyweight clash this weekend. In your opinion, are these two, Chelsea and Manchester City, the two most likely title winners?
I think they are, John, yes. I think it was the 1 and 2 from last year. People are saying about Arsenal and possibly United improving, having a better chance this year. Well, I don't see them challenging these two. I think it will be fought between the two heavyweights, as you say. OK, Sean, let's have a little think about what makes these two the most likely. The money, the power, the know-how when it comes to winning titles?
I think it's all three. They have the money, they have the know-how, and they have the quality. So when you look at both teams, they certainly got match winners when you look at Aguero and Diego Costa. So certainly it's those three things.
Let's talk a bit about Glenn, Chelsea to start off with, as the incumbents, as the title winners last season, the reigning champions. First things first, it's easy to do this with the benefit of hindsight and to revise our opinion. Just how good were they? How much of a challenge did they have last year? How much of a worthy champion was Chelsea?
I think they were worthy champions, they really were. I think we focused on the back end of the season when they weren't functioning as well and they weren't playing the pretty football and the attractive football that they had in the first 6 months up until Christmas, I thought, and just after. They were playing some sensational football with Fabregas and Costa, the new signings, Matic coming in. They had a wonderful balance to their game. They were hard to beat. Yet they had what I call the 3 little inside forwards that all could play in there, all functioning, and Fabregas pulling the strings. I thought overall they thoroughly deserved to win the league last year.
They deserved to win it. They cruised to it. But even as early as this summer, Jose Mourinho, Sean, was already saying it is not going to be as easy this time around. In fact, he said, perhaps owing to the greater democracy because of all the money, he said it's going to be tougher. Whoever wins the league, whether it's Chelsea or anyone, is going to lose more games, not win as many games. We can illustrate this. We've got a graphic here that shows exactly how things could change here. Now, in terms of the last 10 seasons in this league, the most wins by a championship winner was Chelsea back in 2005-06 with 29. The fewest games won by a team that went on to win the title was that 2010-11 Manchester United with 23. So there's a 6-game win disparity there. In terms of defeats, 6 defeats is the most that's been suffered by Chelsea and Manchester City in those respective seasons. The fewest was Chelsea when they cruised it, of course, last time out. So why was he saying this? Was he genuinely saying, because the likes of even Bournemouth or Newcastle can go and spend what they've spent, it's going to be tougher? Or are these early mind games?
It is going to be tougher, and he's right in that, because everyone is added to the squad. Probably Chelsea is added very little. When I think of who they brought, no one's come strikingly to mind. But certainly from City's point of view, that perhaps De Bruyne may be coming in, so obviously that's exciting. We know Sterling's come in, and I think he'll add to it. So, and you look at United, the few players they've brought in. So it's certainly going to be, more interesting and more challenging for whoever goes to win.
What is interesting as well, Glenn, is that he said all that, and with Jose, obviously, every pronouncement, you kind of, you read between the lines, don't you, and you're trying to second-guess what he's saying there. He very soon after that started talking about, yes, I've signed a new deal, but I'm angry because we've stood still. And to paraphrase, if you stand still in this league, you go backwards and all that. Did you have a sense over the summer that you were waiting for Chelsea to do something and it didn't happen?
I felt they weren't going to buy, you know, too many players coming in. I felt that they really did their buying well last season with Fabregas, Costa, great buy, and Matic coming back in. So I felt that they would add to it, but not stringently. I'm not going right 2 or 3 more players. I think there's players in there that now almost had a period of time with Mourinho, have got to perform better. Cuadrado is one. He has got to get a chance and go and play and show what he can do. In Italy, he was outstanding. You know, and for Colombia, he's outstanding. But so there's players already in there that I think he's got to get more out of. They definitely need, I think, full-back position, without a doubt. And the thing is, the clubs down the bottom now, people like Bournemouth coming into the league, it is going to be more difficult for them. They have to move on because these clubs now have got some money. They've all got good money. They all can buy. I mean, Bournemouth have brought 8 new players in. Yeah. You know, it's not like the old days when you get up and you play the squad that's got you up. So all these clubs now have got the money to build their own squads.
And Chelsea are bottom, or were bottom, of the net spend. Curious that, wasn't it, with Newcastle United top. The other thing that's interesting, Sean, as well, I mean, Glenn was talking about a left-back, and with Felipe Luis going, it looks like it's Abdul Babar Rahman from Augsburg, most likely the target for them. But Chelsea, as a rule, have changed, haven't they? They're not splashing the cash in the way that perhaps we've seen Manchester City do more recently. The model at Chelsea is changing.
Yes, it is, and probably one of the good things from Chelsea's point of view, because you can purchase 8 players as 1 or 2 clubs may have done, but will all those players gel? And the fact that Chelsea have spent little is less of a worry. But as he said himself, they've got to move on. They've got to improve their squad and get more out of players like Cuadrado, get more out of him. And other players, so it's certainly be more challenging for them.
That's an interesting point you make, and before we move on to illustrate what is happening there, Cuadrado's a very good case in point, because Cuadrado, Glenn, follows Salah. Salah was a player who'd hurt Chelsea when he was playing at Basel, obviously, and a player that they feared, yet they couldn't seem to find a way to make him work. Is there a little pressure, do you think, internally on the likes of Jose Mourinho and his assistant, his coaching staff, to say, hang on, we'll give you these players? You've got to get something out of them.
Yeah, you've got to do that as a coach. And the last thing a player... You'll never see the best of a player if he doesn't think the manager really is putting his hat on him and putting him in the team and giving him the opportunities. Salah didn't get that opportunity. He's a decent player. You'll see him move on like he has. He'll probably do very well again. But when you go to one of the bigger clubs, City or Chelsea or Man United or Arsenal, you've got to go in there and make your presence has to be as much as anything, as well as your talents. This lad never had that. Cuadrado could be the similar case, unless he gets enough game time to show the crowd, to show his teammates, and to make himself comfortable with the manager. He's got to earn that, but the manager has also got to put him in there and give him some opportunities.
But also, is Jose Mourinho right to say that under these new, slightly more constrained times financially, that he's not being given quite as much backing? Let's illustrate that. Let's show how things have changed. Now, of course, in his first 5 windows, look at that. The first spell he was there, that was when Chelsea were the big hitters in this league, when that Abramovich-funded spend was going and going and going. £192.5 million in signings, 53 sold, net spend of 139. Now, the first 5 transfer windows, up until this point, remember, because this one is still open, first 5 windows, there, 32.1 million net spend. So over 100 million down in terms of a net spend. Yes, the numbers are bigger, but that's a product of the changed economic times, Glenn. But the reality is, the times have changed at Chelsea.
Well, I think they have. I think it's been muted that they want to... they've spent a lot on the academy. They want to look at academy players. They chip a lot of players out on loan, but that's for experience. That's not because they're not good enough at the moment to play for Chelsea. It's to get the experience, to come back, and then the manager assesses them, say, can they get into our first team squad?
Is it also a money-making exercise, Glenn? Because one of the interesting things about the players they have out is they're monitoring them closely and they're looking at the players and they're actually appreciating as assets as well. So it's part of the new Chelsea model.
Listen, when you're Chelsea, Man City, Man United, the top teams, it's very, very difficult to get youngsters through your academy and into your first team. You have to... Normally, it's your Rooney's or your Ferdinands or your Owens or your... the cream comes to the top at that age group. That's the problem with the academy levels, that they spend a hell of a lot of money and they produce one player possibly over 10 years, some clubs. It's hard to get in these teams, so they have to go out on loan, and Chelsea's policy is the right policy, but I think as a club, they're looking at it differently. We want to groom some of our own. Look what John Terry done for us over the years.
Yeah. But also, you know, at a time when we seem to always want it both ways, we should be applauding Chelsea, shouldn't we? Because let's take a look at what they've got for Lukaku, Luiz, Mata. Something like 120 million in. Even De Bruyne. De Bruyne was bought in for Chelsea for less than 7 million and sold for 18. So that part of it's working. But this doesn't help Jose Mourinho, because ultimately we know he wants to win the league, doesn't he? He
wants to win the league, and it depends on how you look at it, because if you talk about the English game, which is a whole separate thing, how many English players are actually getting in the team and starting? So that becomes a whole separate issue. But certainly with the players that they buy and the money they buy them for, it looks good value.
Let's have a little look, shall we? And let's remind ourselves, of course, that Jose is looking to do something that nobody in this country has done since 2009, and that's retain the title. Manchester United, the last team to do that. So, a summer of relative uncertainty, and for Jose to come out and say we have stood still. It wasn't an ideal preparation for the first game of the season. And Glenn, that first game of the season on Saturday evening against an ambitious, adventurous, talented Swansea side, and boy, Chelsea had a few problems, didn't they?
They certainly did, and you said it, you know, they are a talented side. They can cause anyone. They went to Man United and won first day of the season last year with a similar type of squad. They play some wonderful football, they've got a lovely system, and they've got confidence flowing through them. You can see they've had a good pre-season. And Chelsea, let's face it, have not had a good pre-season. It's been stop-start. They came back, a lot of players later because of the amount of football that they'd had during the summer. So, you know, I think Swansea going into this game were actually better prepared. And Mourinho's got to look at himself and his team at the moment on the pitch, not so much off it. He's got to get them players functioning. Matic and Fabregas not playing anywhere near like they did when they started last year.
This is a bizarre thing to say. I heard a couple of pundits say they look leggy. First game of the season. Yeah. Looked leggy, but you can understand it. They did. They looked a little bit like they did in the run-in last season at times, didn't they, Sean?
Well, could it be the credit that Swansea looked really fresh and up for it, and perhaps underestimated what Swansea were about? Because I thought Swansea played a superb game, the way they moved it about. They really got at Chelsea, and it surprised me watching it, but I thought Swansea played a superb game.
Coming back to this point about whether it was, you're absolutely right, the freshness of Swansea or a certain degree of jadedness about them. Let's isolate two players. Now, Jefferson Montero, and we've seen him do this before, he can tear anybody apart, but it just happened to be Branislav Ivanovic who he completely left trailing in his wake. Now, Ivanovic is a player who played an awful lot last year, Glenn, and he's asked to get up and down. Yep. Towards the end of last season, he struggled a bit, and he struggled here, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And this fella is a superb winger. He's an old school winger. But the good thing about him, a winger playing in Swansea, and you've seen it with Sinclair and Dyer over the years, they earn, because they keep the ball and they play so well with the ball, look, they earn him space so that he's always facing the fullback. He's always up against the fullback, attacking them, and it was the same for all the wingers at Swansea over the years. This fella can go either on the outside. Again, look at the way they're keeping the ball. They're making the 5th, 6th pass. Fullbacks have to tuck round like Ivanovic has.
Why couldn't Chelsea cope with him, though, Glenn? Chelsea faced good wingers with respect to Montero, particularly in European football. Why were Chelsea given a bit of a run around here?
Well, I think because they underestimated Swansea. If they had been a little bit leggy, it's what happens before, John. It's in the midfield. If they're not getting quite tight enough, and Shelvey was pulling the strings in there, and Sigurdsson, they had lots of passes in there. And when you have that, your fullback has to come a little bit tighter with your centre-half, so it gives you space for your winger. And then it's up to them. If they've created the space for the winger, now, we say in the old-fashioned way, has he got him on toast? Yeah. And he had him on toast, outside and inside. He's a very good player, man. And
we've touched on this earlier on. They do need look as if they need to switch things around. Perhaps some more cover for Ivanovic on the right-hand side, maybe a new left-back coming in. So that's a personnel decision. Yes. What about the concern, and I'm sure you've all been waiting for us to get to this one, what about the broader anxiety? Now, Chelsea appeared to be a little anxious going into the game. As it evolved, Jose cut a very anxious figure on the touchline. It exploded later on, OK? The injury to Hazard, on goes Eva Carneiro and the medical staff. He absolutely flips, loses it. He's already lost Thibaut Courtois, red-carded. In his opinion, it reduced the number of outfield players unnecessarily, i.e. having to come on, treat him, therefore he has to go off. And Jose then absolutely goes berserk on the touchline. Later, he publicly admonishes his staff there. Look at that reaction there. Now, Glenn, I think essential to this is whether or not we know they were called on or not, or were they, in his opinion, too anxious to get on the pitch at a time when he didn't want them
Well, there's two things. The key things there is that Hazard, it's not a cut, it's not, there's no danger. He's had a little knock, he's gone down. And he must know his team's got 10 men. So
yeah, but if they're waved on, they have to go, don't they?
They don't have to go, no. If they're waved on, they're allowed to come on. The referee's given them the allowance to come on. Whether they go on or not is up to them. And I can see what Mourinho's on about. Yeah. But that should be internal.
Yeah.
That shouldn't... The reaction is way over the top for me, and that should be an internal thing. There is history there. I presume that he's not been happy with quite a few things behind the scenes, and he's reacted, and that's his opportunity to say, you're out and somebody else is coming in. And that's how I'm reading that as a manager. That can't be a one-off scenario, surely.
I would read it exactly the same, because what Mourinho is known for is actually being the best manager in terms of man management. Yeah. And that is one of his staff. And that just, it screams, not Mourinho, to actually say what he says publicly. And you know, the physio is now thinking, or the doctor, sorry, is now thinking, I'm going on to treat a multi-million-pound player. It looks as though he needs me to come on, and he's going on. And I do understand his position as a manager, as Glenn would certainly understand. He would have been down to 9 men, and the consequences could have been perhaps conceding another goal and losing the game. But to actually say that publicly, I think, as Glenn said, there's something either going on behind the scenes there that he's not happy with.
Is he deflecting? I mean, obviously, in the post-match interview, he did deflect because he wouldn't get drawn, he said, on the sending off, and instead he went on about the medical staff again. Is it a classic Jose device? Does he always need someone to...
No, I think that's genuine in what he's done and how he's reacted, went on television and said what he said, because I think there's another agenda going on there.
Right.
He saw it, because normally you would give somebody a second chance on that. You know, it's a mistake, so you give him a second chance, surely. The physio probably won't get chopped, but the doctor has. Right. I think that tells her the story. Yeah. But again, it's the deflection, he's very good at that, though. When things are not going well for Chelsea and results are not, he'll come up with something about a sending off, or he'll attack the opponent's manager, or he'll verbally touch the referee, so it deflects. Now, this has become a deflection in the newspapers. I'm not sure he's been in control of that, because they've said no comment on it. But at the end of the day, he's not a happy bunny, John. You said it earlier. He's not happy within himself at the moment. He knows his team are way below par. Right,
that's a very good point. So it betrays a greater anxiety. Now, let's not do the knee-jerk reaction. We've been cautioning against this all weekend long. Everyone plays one game. You know, if you're Arsenal, it's not the end of the world. If you're Manchester United, yes, you'll get better. Same with maybe Liverpool. But for Chelsea, yeah, Glenn's already made the point that before, during and after the game, there's a sense that they're not quite there, are they? Do you share that belief?
Well, yes, that's exactly the case. But it seems... It has to be clearly a distraction, because it's only one game, but it only goes to show how much a winner he is and how much he doesn't want to drop any points. And perhaps how much an embarrassment it is to actually not win a game that everyone predicted and thought they would have won.
Right. So where does the Chelsea story go from here? Concurrent to the start of the season was a little bit of anger up on Merseyside at Goodison about the John Stones supposed approach by Chelsea. Now, obviously, this is the one transfer story with respect to, Baba Rahman and all that. This is the big one, isn't it? This is the one they seem to be talking about. Even John Terry had something to say about this one. Is it something, if there is something in this, that Chelsea really need to be pursuing right now for all they're worth?
I think it's something they want to do for now, this season, and for the future. He's a very good prospect as a centre-half, we know that. But I think with John Terry, Ivanovic even, they need to... They've got Zuma, they need to get youth in there as well. Now, if they feel that there's no one in their academy that's going to come through, to spend 30 million on Stones is going to be cheap, because he'll sign a 5 or 6 year contract, and that'll equate to less than sort of 8 million a year, if you look at it that way. So, for me, he's a good defender who's only going to get better. And, yeah, put your bid in. Put your bid in. If they turn it down, they turn it down. Improve your bid. And if they turn it down, if they take it, then that's how you do business. And I'm sure they're looking to improve the squad, because John Terry will not be able to play every single game like he did last year.
And that is the point, isn't it? I mean, we'll come back to the strikers later on, right? But if John Terry isn't able to play all the games, then Stones, his manager, Roberto Martinez, raves about the player. He said that the likes of Barcelona have regularly spoken to him about this player. Is he that good? Is he someone who could step into Chelsea's back four right now?
Well, he has to adjust his game because he's a player that takes one or two little chances, and I think those chances will be eliminated in terms of once he gets around the Chelsea back four and John Terry showing him. I think he is quality. I think he can go into Chelsea's team and do a good job. But for me, he would have to modify his game because he's a player that likes to actually step forward at times, drive forward, and you don't typically see Chelsea centre-halves do that. They win it and they give it to the players who can play.
We'll turn the conversation far more specifically to the game this Sunday a bit later on, Glenn. But seeing as we're going down this path right now, let's talk about squad building. Hey, there's time. There's plenty of time left to spend an awful lot of money between now and the end of this window. Based on what you've seen this summer, based on what we've seen briefly this weekend and in the Community Shield before that, are there other areas that Chelsea need to strengthen in?
I think they're looking for a left-back. I think they're desperate for a left-back. That's got to happen. Yeah. And I'll be interested to see if he goes for an attacking left-back. Because the thing about Mourinho, he's always put chains on his full-backs. Yeah. Ivanovic has always been a good, solid defender. He does get himself forward, but is he someone that can drop his shoulder, make half a yard and get decisive crosses in? No, he's not. So maybe two full-backs, possibly. I think they need a striker as well. I think if Costa is going to go, you know, that hamstring fouls, you know, is Falcao sharp enough after his injury? And is Remy going to play down the middle, as he likes to play one up top? Majority of the time, I think he needs another striker up there as well.
Sean, I'm fascinated in the Costa thing here, and we'll have a bit more time later. But, I mean, you know, OK, we saw it happen to Michael Owen. We've seen it happen to strikers, but usually later on in their careers. I know he looks a bit older, but he's a fairly young striker still. Yet they seem to be extremely concerned that even he doesn't quite know whether that hamstring or those hamstrings are good or not. How much of a problem is this?
It's a huge problem because it has now happened a couple of times. And if it's one and you don't sort of pull your hammy for another 2-3 seasons, then it doesn't concern you too much. But this is twice within the space of six months or so. So it's not a good thing, certainly from Chelsea's point.
I mean, he was scampering around. In fact, he was full sprint a lot of the time, wasn't he, the other day?
Oh, no, he was at full throttle there. I mean, there was times when he really opened up, and a hamstring is only tested in, I feel, in match situations. You can train and you push it, you ask the player to sprint, but that is where you have to open up. He had problems with this, though, John, when he was at Madrid. It's a long-term thing. It's not just happened at Chelsea. So my concerns for Mourinho would be, if he goes out, am I happy with Remy? Am I happy with... Are those two enough to go a long season? I don't think they are.
You see, I mean, we were sitting here talking earlier on and saying, hey, what did Chelsea do? And you're talking about an interesting loan move for Radamel Falcao. Now, OK, a player who Chelsea discovered firsthand in Monaco a couple of years ago, at his best, could destroy anybody. But that's not the Falcao we saw here in England last year, is it? So, what have they done?
Well, they have got a quality player, but he has to step up and be the player he once was. He's capable of doing it. It's a case of him settling into Chelsea's team and understanding their way of playing. And Fabregas, for me, is going to be the most important player to supply him, because he gives those quality through balls that can see those clever runs, slide him down his side and put him in to be able to get those finishes.
But Glenn, again, you know, if you're, let's say you're at boardroom level at Chelsea and you looked at it, you say we've got a striker who's got a question mark over his hamstrings and one who's got a big question mark over his knees. They're two of our three strikers, with Remy, who doesn't seem to get a regular run in the background. Is that enough?
That's what I'm saying. I don't think it is. I think Mourinho would be saying that, and the board, at board level, whoever pulls the strings now financially has got to look at that. And that's when your financial head of your club and your football head go together and they come out with what's right for the team. And for me, they've got to go and buy. Falcao, I watched Chelsea at Wembley, and they found it very difficult when Costa wasn't playing. That was without Costa. They found it very difficult at times to get in behind teams. And I think that's their problem. Costa gives them that option, like the Fabregas ball that he can hit. He had no options. They were very slow and pedestrian in the way they've been building up, all through pre-season and certainly against Swansea. So they've now got to look how they're going to get the ball in behind defenders. And that's a problem for them at home when teams bank up against them and really don't give them that space.
That's right. I mean, it's a very different challenge against City away, where they might be content to, who knows, I'm not going to use the phrase, but let's say not lose the game this weekend. But to Hazard, is there an over-reliance on Hazard? Once they lost Costa towards the end of last season and they rotated what striking options they had, it seemed as if everything fell upon Hazard. If he performed, he might come up with a goal. Is that unfair on the man?
No, because he has the ability. You know, John Terry himself says, you know, he's in the league as Messi. So if that being the case, if Diego Costa isn't playing, he has to step up and take a hold of that team and say, I'm going to serve Jordan and create these opportunities to score these goals. He's the only player that I've seen come to City at the Etihad and actually tear apart Zabaleta. I watched him and I thought, this is a real quality player, the way he actually took apart Zabaleta. And Zabaleta early on gave him a hit to let him know he was there. But it's fascinating to see the challenge between those two. But Hazard certainly has it within him to take the games and win games.
Sean, Glenn, take a breather for a moment. We've gone up and running here, and there's time later on for conclusions as to just where Chelsea are, where the rest of them are, and how it fits into the context of the game coming up at the Etihad this Sunday, but also the title race, which is broadly where we are on today's Football Today. OK, so much for them. We'll turn our attention to City when we come back. Welcome back to Football Today, where we're looking ahead to the really first, I suppose, heavyweight clash of the season this Sunday at the Etihad. Manchester City taking on Chelsea. Now, Glenn Hoddle's here, Sean Goater's here. We've cast an eye over Chelsea. Now we're going to turn our attention to Manchester City before, in some kind of detail, we really get into what we expect to happen over the touchscreen this coming weekend at the Etihad. OK, guys, let's, before we do anything else, just talk about Manchester City. We will get to their game in a moment, but before we do anything else, Glenn, let's talk about City over the summer. What was your perception of City? A team that would go again, a team that had not done well last year, perhaps, and would offer more of a challenge this time out?
Yeah, I felt that. I think they've done that in the past, actually. Their history, their recent history, they seem to have a really good season. They can't follow it up with a backup season. So it's this turn. It's turn for them to have a really good season.
It's cyclical,
again,
isn't it?
you know?
Do you share that opinion that, for whatever reason, they just haven't learned how to defend a title?
Well, yeah, and many teams who've won it before found it hard. But certainly City is not experienced at winning a title and then keeping it or maintaining it. So I say that's where I'm looking. I'm looking at getting back to my best and leading this team to win the championship again. Statement
or just City being what City can be, Glenn, for you?
Statement, because I think City, you say about a West Brom team, but City have come unstuck against the lesser teams over when they've fouled in the year, whatever year it is, they drop points stupidly.
But Burnley was the big one, wasn't
Exactly. So I think that's a statement. I think the key players, when City have got their key players playing like their spine, Aguero, from Aguero to Company, Toure and Silva, those lads, obviously Aguero wasn't playing, but when those players play and they look like they're up for it, Toure looks like he's mentally, all the rubbish of leaving now and the agent floating things, stories about him leaving, has gone. He looks more single-minded. He seems to be happy to be there. Silva, for me, playing just in behind is the position for him. He gets chucked out sometimes wide. I think he was playing in that position where he can really hurt you because he can go left, he can go right, he can get in the box, as we saw him for the goal. And so there was, and Company looks as if he knows he let himself down and the club down last year. He looks really focused. And if he's injury-free, because he had quite a few injuries last year, if he stays fit, and Aguero, obviously, with his goal-scoring abilities, I think they really have got their spine sorted out this year.
Yeah, we'll build on that graphically in a moment, Glenn. But Sean, it's a good point that Glenn makes there. There's a lot that's good about them. They could even afford to have their Argentine players on the bench for the start of the West Brom game. However, you know, Dzeko gone, Jovetic, which never really worked, he's out as well. Is that an area with Bonnie there and no one else really that satisfies you?
Well, I'm really hoping that Bonnie would have got off the mark to really put sort of pressure on Aguero, and only for himself, in that if there's another striker that's scoring goals, then it's only better for City. City, when they had their best spell, they had all three strikers, Edin Dzeko, Negredo, and Aguero. They were all scoring goals, and it needs to get back to their place. So Bonnie needs to start well in terms of scoring goals, because we all know that Aguero is going to score goals.
Well, you say all that, but the amazing thing about the other day was it reminded us that they've still got the main man in Yaya Toure. And we'll be talking about Yaya Toure in just a moment. And Yaya Toure has had a lot to say, hasn't he, lately, about how things have changed from last year and this year being completely different. And he's addressed that. Well, he said nothing has changed. He said, I'm the same player and I've delivered OK last year. His manager, Manuel Pellegrini, however, after the game, seemed to have a very different opinion.
I think that Yaya has a strange year. Last year was not normal in the way he started the season, with so many problems with the death of his brother. After that, a lot of problems with his agent. I think that now he's more calm, and we are going to see the same Yaya that we know how good player he is.
Pellegrini there talking about the main man. And we're going to come back to Yaya Touré in just a moment, Glenn. But what was interesting about this team, as I said just now, was that they could afford to say, you know what, we're going to have to rest a few of our players, in particular the Argentine players. So that meant that we saw Sagna, but instead, obviously, you'd normally expect to see Zabaleta in here, wouldn't you? We'd normally expect to see Aguero up there. But if we take a little look at what we saw the other night, and for those purposes, we'll get rid of him because Sagna is capable of getting forward, then Yaya Touré was the really interesting one here, with Fernandinho occupying this position and Yaya Touré here. Did we get a little glimpse of maybe the future with Yaya Touré? Are we likely to see him deployed up here? Are we likely to perhaps not see Navas? And instead, if we were to take a little look at the midfield options, not for now because of injury, but for the future, that we might see a situation whereby we have two in here that frees him a little bit more? If so, what happens?
Well, if that's the case, then you want him in the last third as many times as you can. He's a dangerous player. But you want Silva in there as well. So if you set up with two behind, I think Silva gets chucked out here sometimes. I don't think they're at their best when they do that. I would love to see him know that he's in that position, behind the striker, and what they do there. Now, I think it's their opposition. If they're playing West Brom, if they're playing teams that they can get away with playing him in a deeper position... and then allowing him to really, in a way, they end up with the shape of a V, with a sitting player and
then what do I do? I give you a Navas or a Nasri or even a De Bruyne or someone like that in the future. So they've got a little bit more of an offence.
Yeah, they've got some even more options, not within personnel, John, but within a shape. But I think the problem he's got is defensively. When they play with only two in there, like that, if you're playing a Chelsea, if you're playing against Arsenal, he doesn't track people. He lets people run off him. You put a good player like Fabregas up against him and sit on him and then go off him, he'll run the game. That's the problem that City have got when he plays deep.
Let's have a look. Let's have a look at him, because the counter to that is, yes, that happens when he plays deep, but there are very few, if any, players better picking the ball up there, are they?
Absolutely, that's where you want him. You want him in the last third, you want him coming from deep, driving forward into them positions. He's picked a lovely position, almost like David Silva's. David Silva's ended up deeper. He's gone in. That's good players playing off each other, John. But you want him in that area because he's absolutely fantastic. Beautiful layoff from Boney, which I think he's good at laying things on from. I think Boney, when he plays in there, he's got to score goals, but I think he will create a lot the way he plays for the midfield players to come into. That'll be another dimension that City will have.
It's funny, you talk about Yaya being the main man, but in terms of the numbers he pulls up, in terms of the quality he produces, you might argue that he's got a rival for that tag in terms of this guy. Just how good is he, and how much does he dictate everything that happens in this part of the pitch for City?
Well, I like him, I've said before, I like him playing in this position where we've put him, so that he can end up out on the left, he can end up in the right, he's free to float and go wherever. You see the first goal, he ends up in the penalty area with the little flick, so he's a box threat as well, in and around. They had so much possession against West Brom, and a lot of teams that they play against, they're going to have possession, so he's going to be fed the ball in that last third.
He also looks the catalyst, and Raheem Sterling, all eyes on Sterling this past Monday night, and Silva seemed to be the man, inevitably, who looked to try and get the best out of Sterling, didn't he?
I mean, they've got a nice little link already. They're two good footballers playing off each other, and they're on the same wavelength. But, you know, for me, Silva, the greatest asset he's got is he plays with his head up. Look at his head up. He's running with the ball. He's always he's linking again. But look at his head. Watch his head. He's got his head's up. He's looking. What a ball that is! And you know that's the difference in the last third.
This is maybe the key one, though, isn't it? That's the key one, because we're beginning to now look towards what do they get out of Sterling, and I think we need to start turning our thoughts to Sterling and what City, in a broad sense, hope to get out of him. The manager was fairly dismissive of him, saying, yeah, not bad, could have been a better debut by him, could have been a better debut by him, you know, by his own standards, we know he could do better. First things first, is that where you think City see him being deployed, or elsewhere?
Well, I think he starts in that shape, but he's given the licence to come in. We saw him just in them clips there, a lot of his play was inside, because they've got the likes of Cliche or Kolarov, as it was the other night, who can actually bomb forward and create that space.
And Kolarov's someone who naturally will do that.
He'll end up going there because they've got a lot of possession. That you can do that when you've got easy possession. But for me, Sterling isn't yet the player to put your hat on. He's £49 million, but you're buying potential. He's not a nearly £50 million player that is going to come in and make the difference. That spine that we spoke about with Silva, Torre, Company, Aguero and Hart. They're the key players that will make City be successful this year or not.
Glenn, I noticed you've been publicly critical. You've been fairly hard on this player in various media outlets. You know, is it with £44 million price tag that everything has to be good about him, and you're not seeing that everything is good about him?
No, not yet. I think they've bought potential. I think he's an excellent player. I haven't really criticised him. I like the player. He's got so many assets. But is he a £49 million worth player? When you buy £49 million worth, he's got to make the difference. And I don't think he'll make the difference yet. It's those key players have got to make it. He needs a good season to get to get himself confident, to get to know how they're playing, and he needs to improve on his finishing as well.
And you quite rightly judge him by the very highest standards, as do the likes of Michael Owen, who sat in the studio, because when it comes down to it, that money should buy you a goal there, shouldn't it?
Exactly. If you're buying that sort of player, he should be punishing teams. You get in and you give him the service, you know, whether it's his first game or his 51st game, that has got to be a better effort. You've got to make the goalkeeper do far more, and he should be scoring those sort of goals. Last year at Liverpool, he had a similar scenario on occasions where he didn't take the chances that were created for him. And if he does that and starts improving over a period of time, the 5-year contract and the money, that makes sense. It's not expensive.
And if that works, then City have got the better deal. Right now, I'll put you on the spot here. Who's got the better out of this deal, Liverpool or City?
I think City will do eventually. Yeah, at this moment in time, no, because the kid isn't the finished article yet.
Right, Glenn, so this is pretty much where we're going in a broad sense with City, but in a moment we're going to turn it also to this weekend as well. Before we do that, though, let's talk one more time about Yaya Toure. Not so much about where he fits into the framework of the team, but more about the attitude, the statement of intent, the passion we saw from these City players, Company included. He's already starting to think about the title race this season. He's starting to think about this Sunday, and judging by the sound of things, he's very positive.
I think it's earlier, you know what I mean. Premier League is very tough and it's very long way to go, you know. And there remain 37 games coming, and we want to take a full credit of all the games coming, you know what I mean. And yeah, Sunday is gonna be tough again. After that, we have a Saturday or Sunday again against Everton. I think it's a strong start. We full focus, you know, this year. We want to do it. We want to do it for the fans and yeah, for the chairman, Khaldun and Sheikh Mansour. They're doing a lot of job to make this club great.
Does it set you up nicely then, this result, going into that game on Sunday against Chelsea?
Yeah, I hope. You know, we don't know what's going to happen on Sunday, but what we want to start in front of a new stadium of full 50,000 fans, and how it's going to be a trip for us.
OK, Yaya Toure there, and Glenn, I just want to separate Sterling and Bonnie. I'd love to see them play that close together, but I don't think that's going to happen, so let's just give them a little bit of room there. Now, let's characterise what we might see. As you can see, we've put two teams up here for you because they're going head-to-head at the Etihad. It's a heavyweight clash, this one. However, it's only the second game of the season, Glenn. As a consequence of that, even though they've only picked up a point in their first game, do you expect a defensive performance by Chelsea? And if so, is it going to be an agenda whereby they have to break this team down?
Yeah, I think Mourinho will go there and make it tight. He'll keep that same back four as we've put up there. Obviously, Courtois can't play, so Bergovic, who came in and did quite well, actually, I've got to say, looked comfortable. But
does he have an option?
Would have preferred Courtois.
Does he have an option, though? Does he have an option of going super defensive and saying, well, we'll have to lose one there, and instead what we're going to do is we're going to come into our team here, Chelsea, and we're going to say, we've done it before. We go to teams early in the season, and all we really want to do is make sure that we don't surrender too much of the advantage. So we go with someone like, you know, Mikel, pop him in here, pop this guy forward a little bit, get Fabregas in a more advanced midfield role, and say, like, we're going to shut up shop here. Whatever the personnel would be, I would probably say that Oscar would go out and Willian would stay in. For his legs, okay. I would probably go that. But the ideal is to have two holding players, screening the centre halves. He's not very expensive with his fullbacks anyway, Mourinho. And I think they'd say, look, you do a defensive job today, go and support the play, don't get in front of the ball, and be nice and tight, and let Costa, Hazard, Fabregas go and win the game for us. You know, Matic at times may get in there. Set plays, they're always dangerous from, without a doubt. So I think he will have that head on, because he won't want to go 5 points adrift from City.
at this stage. It's not defining if it is 5 points with the league, because there's so many points to be played. But at this moment in time, Mourinho, I tell you that he knows this team isn't functioning anywhere near as good as it needs to be to win the league. And this is a game where, if he goes 5 points behind City, if this was against a mid-table team, it'd be different. But City, he cannot give them. So a point, he'll take a point on Sunday, there's no doubt about it.
He'll take a point, and we've seen him, as recently as last season, show a lot of respect, if you will, to Manchester City, or perhaps the opposite. Maybe he doesn't feel that they can break his team down that easily. Do you think this lot, this time around, will say, presumably, I mean, if you want to just lose Aguero for me there, then Bonnie there and bring in Aguero. So let's pick ourselves a new striker. So let's just go in through here and pick a striker. Go to forwards, down the bottom there, Glenn, bottom left-hand corner, and then we'll bring Aguero in, because presumably he's fine to go, even if there was a slight illness doubt about him at the weekend. So can they break them down?
Yes, they can. What I saw from pre-season games I've seen, and I've seen obviously against West Brom, if they play Silva in there, he'll give him the ammo. There's no doubt about it. I think his movement in behind defenders is what you need when teams, if Chelsea do make it tight, you need his movement. Boney's not so... Boney, you can play into feet. This fella wants to go in behind. Sterling, obviously, I think they'll have overload of the ball, City, as well. And sometimes, John, it's the timing of the fixture. This has come so early in the season. Chelsea are not functioning anywhere near like it. I see City saying this is a good time to play them. Let's go on the front foot and get.
But are they going to hit the ground running? Let's bring Sean in here, because the player that you've just brought in, substituted in, Aguero, quite clearly last season with that 26 goals, Golden Boot winner. He is the main man, Sean. But is he going to be able to hit the ground running to such an extent that he can take on that battle-hardened Chelsea defence and beat them?
Well, it may be a bit questionable, because, again, he's someone that's come back from the summer having still played, and is he fully up to scratch? Obviously, if they feel he's right, then they will play him. And he'll certainly be key, as Glenn said. He makes those runs in behind, and David Silva will be able to find him. So he'll be key, and I'm hoping he is able to play.
Yeah. OK, Glenn, what do you think? Do you think Aguero... This might come a bit too soon for Aguero, because once he gets ahead of steam up, no one can stop him, can they?
No, I think the manager would look to start him possibly against this team, although Boney did well the other night, and maybe say, give me 60 minutes. Give us real 60 minutes. Don't try and hold anything back. We've got Boney to come on, but I think for them to get in behind Terry and Cahill, I think it's important that Aguero at times, you know, Man City last season were playing very, very average, and he was the difference. I mean, I was at QPR at the time. He scored 2 wonderful goals. We absolutely battered them for sort of 70 minutes of the game, and he was the difference and got them a draw.
OK, the tricky one about this one, Glenn, is if you look at Manchester City, Manchester City are probably going to have to think a little bit about what they do in midfield for this game as well, because once more we find ourselves, don't we, saying, is that going to be enough? Or will they have to push him back in here and do this? Or do they, again, lose him? And do we get ourselves back into that situation we found ourselves in, where we're saying, right, OK, it's City having to change, City having to think to themselves, what do we do midfield-wise? Do we say, we're going defensive here, and we're going to have to say, right, OK, maybe, and we've seen them do this before, maybe we even end up with, you know, Fernando and Fernandinho, and we go down that route there.
They've got that fantastic luxury of saying, right, let's go again with that same midfield. You played really well, lads. Let's go again, because we like what we saw. But if they do that, if they go and stiffen that up in there, which they've done in the past, then how do you employ these two boys? Are you going to be unbalanced if they both play in the centre? What I'd like to see, unfortunately, as I said, unfortunately he gets chipped out there sometimes. I think as a coach sometimes, what I would be thinking to do is share the load. At times have him out there and have him, so you're rotating and you're free to rotate. Defensively, you know they've got the security there of these two covering if this right-hand side is open. So there's a way of working that around to get both them players nearer to the opponent's goal.
No Milner as an option, which sometimes worked in a very workmanlike way. Exactly. One more for Sean, one more quickly for Sean, and that concerns this defence here. Now, you know, Glenn's had his say about that defence. Everyone's had their say about the Mangala Di Michelis thing. Costa, and it's most likely Costa and Hazard asking the questions, will they be relishing a chance to get at that City central defence, which wasn't as strong as it might have been, company included, last season?
Well, yes, Diego Costa will certainly be. Mangala made his debut against Chelsea, and in fact, he played superbly well. He was really up for the battle physically. He seemed to dominate Diego Costa, and I think Diego Costa will certainly be aware of that and will not be having that this time around. So it makes it really interesting. Company's up for it. We see from his celebrations at the West Brom game. So it makes for a really intriguing encounter, certainly in that department.
Glenn, we're going to wander back over there, but let's have a think of a prediction. What do you reckon is going to happen? Let's wander back over and give me an idea of what you think is going to happen in this game.
Well, I think, as I said earlier there, I think City are liking the fact that they're playing Chelsea so early at home as well. And the way Chelsea are playing, I think it's a great time for City. If those key players that really performed well against West Brom do it again, I fancy City to win this game. I really do. I think they see an opportunity here that Chelsea are almost like a little bit wounded at the moment, not playing at their best. Let's get at them. All this stuff about the doctor as well is negative, let's be fair. It's not positive for Chelsea. This is the right time to go and take the points of them.
We've still got a relatively long time till that game, haven't we? And a lot can happen, particularly in the transfer market, Sean, between now and then. There's a lot of talk about Kevin De Bruyne, and that would be an interesting one, wouldn't it, really, when you consider his Chelsea background, the fact that there's every indication that he could be as much as a £47 million signing for Manchester City. Resurrecting his career at Wolfsburg, putting some good numbers together there. Is he somebody that City absolutely feel they must have?
Yes, and I think he'll be a great addition when you talk about not only for the Premier League, but the Champions League. Yeah. He offers pace, he offers a high number of assists. Yeah. So all those assists that we typically get from David Silva or Yaya Toure, we're now looking at him sharing some of that load, and obviously Sterling will be chipping in. And he offers his pace, and I think he'll offer a little bit of a challenge to Neves, because Neves has been really disappointed in terms of his goal return. For a player of his quality, Spanish international, he's not really produced what he should be producing.
Glenn, I'm interested in this De Bruyne situation. In his time at Chelsea, I mean, he only played a couple of games. One of them was a park the bus 0-0 third game of the season at Manchester United. Jose Mourinho later said, the player said to me that he has a personality that can't accept not being a regular starter. Jose rather archly then said, or maybe he couldn't handle the competition. One thing we do know, he's gone away and he's blossomed, hasn't he? Blossomed into what? Someone that's worth that much money that could go into the City starting 11?
You don't know whether he's worth that money, but looking at his assists and his goals, he's matured. He's gone away and he's a better player now than he was when he was at Chelsea. There's no doubt about that. And to score those goals and assists in the German league, you know, it's a tough league over there. Although it's become a little bit more open in the last few years. But I think if City buy him, it doesn't matter what money to City, really. It doesn't matter how much they pay for him. I think they're getting a really good player who can actually, I agree with Sean there, that can improve City. If, you know, Navas going out and him coming there, you can see him and Silva and the likes of Toure really on a really good footballing wavelength.
What would it mean to Sterling, guys? Let's say he comes in. Let's say he becomes all that Glenn said he could become. Does that mean Sterling really is the sort of the luxury of a work in progress, 40-odd million, but a work in progress, not necessarily a starter?
I think the great thing about Sterling, he can play in a number of positions. I mean, Glenn spoke a lot about Silva playing in that row, and I think he'd also look to play Sterling. I heard him a few of his remarks. Pellegrini saying that Sterling could also play up front or off the front player. So I think we'd see him play in that number 10 role just off the striker, where we're talking about David Silva playing most of the time. He has that flexibility. So
I think he could play in that position in Champions League when teams are coming at you and you want some pace to go in behind and counter-attack teams. I see that in the Champions League without a doubt, Sean. Yeah, I really do. But I think a lot of teams against City are going to bank up. You need, for me, you need Silva's little bit of magic, that little bit of vision to open the door.
Yeah. Sean, it's lovely to sit here, isn't it, and speculate on what might work or what might not work. We have the luxury of that. Manuel Pellegrini doesn't have the luxury of that. Yeah, OK, people will say, yeah, but he's got a two-year contract extension. Maybe those who are slightly more cynical will suggest, well, that just tries to keep people a little bit quiet, because there has been speculation about his future. There have been questions as to whether he really is the right man for the job, despite his successful first season. What do you make of Pellegrini? Is he under absolute pressure to deliver one of those two big trophies, whether it's domestically or in Europe this season?
Yes, he is. And it's very important that the team get a good start, because if they're not to get a good start, I think the media has always been this little whisper around about Pep Guardiola coming in. And if he doesn't start well, I think everyone will be after him.
Do you think Pellegrini's gone anyway, regardless of whether he delivers something this season or not?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. I think put it this way. I'll answer it a bit. I think if Guardiola's contract had come to the end, I think we'd have seen Pellegrini go. Yes. So I've answered it. I think Pep's contract ends next year, doesn't it? So let's see how he's got to do a lot this year to keep his job. Put it that way.
OK, it was a little bit naughty, I know, but enjoyed it. What happened to Manchester City last season? Right to the turn of the year, it was tight. And let's just illustrate exactly how badly they fell away here, because New Year's Day, they were locked up with Chelsea. Subsequent to that, in fact, they actually had an extra game to play, didn't they, Manchester City? So there you go. They played 11 to Chelsea's 10. Wow, what a falling off that was. 5 losses. The Burnley one, probably the worst of the bunch in those 11 games there. Only 14 points taken from 33 available. By the way, Chelsea weren't, all conquering. Chelsea still dropped 6 points in that time, but they cruised to the title. So is that, and to the indictment, if you want, the detriment of Manuel Pellegrini, that his club was able to fall apart quite that badly?
Yes, and to give him a bit of backing, what was one of the issues they had that many would not have known? This is when they moved to the new training centre at the Etihad. Yeah. So along that period, players like routine, players like to know how long it takes to get to training and all those sort of things. And so the facility is so big, so players in the first sort of week to 2 weeks is adjusting to the travel route as to where they're going, how they get there, how long it takes. And with that, the bad performances came. And I think that had somewhat to do with it.
Have you heard that from within the camp?
Within the camp. I think it's known from people within the camp. It's not been put out there. But behind the scenes, we've now changed our location where we travel and train. It may seem like a nothing suggestion.
Glenn, are you having that?
Not really.
You're not really having it?
Well, because if they were going from a fantastic training camp downsizing and going to a training camp that's not particularly nice and it's not, then I'd say, well, yeah, that would have an effect on them. But they've gone up. I mean, I would imagine that is absolutely
But the disruption, I think Sean's saying, just the disruption to routine.
What's the disruption? They take the kit, they take the boots. They've got probably perfect pitches to train on. I'm not sure. I just felt, that they took their foot off the pedal.
Yeah, it was a bad spell.
It was a bad finish to the season. Yeah. Aguero held them together almost on his own at times.
What did you make of the big men as well, Sean? Because, they've got big personality, they've got leaders there. Company, by his own admission, it wasn't just scoring goals. He's not there to score goals. Defensively, looked as if he wasn't quite the Company that we'd come to know. Yaya, as much as you might protest otherwise, didn't appear to be quite the same. Was that as much as anything to do with it? Yeah, the big performers didn't necessarily hit the top of their game.
It didn't happen. And another thing that was slightly happening, I think, Nasri in big games, I think, was talking but not delivering. So you got all those things in terms of Company not actually playing to the level. Yaya, all this distraction about his in not producing to the level he can. And you got Nasri, particularly talk about when City played Barcelona and saying, well, the only good player is Messi. Everyone knows you do not say that with the world's sort of best players. You stay humble and say they're a good team and you try to do your talking on the field. Subsequently, he didn't play well in that game, and in the Champions League games, he didn't really perform. So it's a number of things that added to the team throughout the season.
OK, great. Thanks for that insight there. I had not heard that at all in terms of a disruption to them. Thanks very much, Sean. Let's take a little breather, just for a time being. We'll take a commercial break right now. Welcome back. Of course, you're watching Football Today from our London studios, where our thoughts actually have been very much on Manchester this weekend. City take on Chelsea, and we've been talking about that game, but also the title race. But is it, Glenn and Sean, is it a two-team title race? Are there other contenders or pretenders, as we said before the break, for the title? Let's work our way through the most likely. We'll start off with Arsenal. Now, in this studio last Friday, we had a season launch show in which we invited the viewers online through a poll to pick a winner. They picked Arsenal. Quite overwhelmingly, they picked Arsenal, and we've seen that happen elsewhere. So was that born, Sean, of a summer that saw them pick up little pre-season tournaments, swagger around, smile a lot, maybe take a selfie, maybe not? Where did that confidence come from?
Well, yes, they played exceptionally well in pre-season. They were scoring goals, they were looking fluent, they were looking like Arsenal. I think Arsenal are probably just short of this top world-class striker, and I think once they have that, with the way they play, I think they'll be certainly up there, and you'd have no doubt but to say it's them in terms of challenging for the top position.
That's interesting. I mean, not just that you've gone to a striker, and we'll come back to that striking options in just a moment, but again, bigger picture. I mean, I was lucky to interview Arsene Wenger a couple of times this summer and asked him about strikers, and he didn't really want to talk about strikers. He wanted to talk about the likes of Ozil. He wanted to talk about Wilshere, unfortunately now injured, and Walcott coming back. And what he talked about more than anything was the fact that he liked his squad, that he thought he had a squad, particularly with Cech involved, that could go for it. Would you have shared that enthusiasm a week or two ago?
I think offensively, he's very happy with his midfield and he's up front. He's got Welbeck to come in there. He's got he's going to look at Walcott down the middle. Chamberlain, who is a very good young player, is going to get better and better. So I think offensively, he's quite happy. For me, I'm smiling because defensively, they brought Petr Cech in. If they'd brought, I don't know why everyone's saying, oh, Arsenal are now capable of winning the league. To win the league, you've got to defend properly right the way through the season. I don't think this team's capable of defending right the way through the season and winning the league. I really don't. So they haven't brought two centre-halves in or a full-back in and new players and freshened up the whole back four or a holding player in midfield. Yes, Coquelin's done very well. It's still going to be Mertesacker, Koscielny, Gabriel, who's not proven at this level, and the same frailties were there in the first day of the season.
And that's a great point that you make, Glenn, because it was the most shocking result of the weekend and the most shocking individual story of the weekend. That was Petr Cech. Has he now come in behind a defence that, as we saw last season, they let in the highest percentage of headed goals? Has he come in behind a defence that, as Glenn said, Sean, cannot defend properly?
Well, this is clearly their weakness, in crosses and set pieces. But Arsenal, if they're going to win anything, is going to be on how well they go forward, and they're going to win games either 3-2 or 4-2. And is not, he's not going to have a team set up like Mourinho would and win a game 1-0 or 2-1.
But that's that. You can't count on that. I mean, West Ham demonstrated that. Good game plan. They exploited the weaknesses. And did you feel for Petr Cech? OK, the finger was pointed at him. But at Chelsea, for example, Glenn, would you have had to try and come for that?
This goal, he would never even been coming for it because you'd have had John Terry or Ivanovic or a centre-half tracking. That is awful defending, similar defending that I've seen Arsenal have for 4 or 5 years. Koscielny, they're all going back in a zonal position. But you've got to go back, even if you're in zone, goal side of attackers. Sean wouldn't have that. He'd have a field day if there was balls coming in like that. Yeah. So Petr Cech at Chelsea wouldn't have even been coming. I don't blame him so much for that one. Well, he's come because he's seen the attacker goal side with no defender near him, and he's come and thought, I'll try and deal with that. They haven't dealt with it.
Well, OK, let's go back to that, because, Sean, this looks fundamental. I mean, teams have to defend balls like this several times every match.
Well, yes, and when I look at it, initially I was thinking, well, are they too deep? But actually, where they start, it looks on the arc of the 18, which isn't a bad place to start. Yeah. But again, you have to be goal side. As I say, both side, goal side is real simple for defenders, and he clearly is. He's free to start with.
That's the problem. If you analyse it, they've gone back, they're thinking being in a zone and going back together is enough. No, it's not. You go back as a zone, but you actually get yourself up against attackers. If there's no one there, you reshuffle yourself to where the attacker is and then go back in a zone. And I've seen that happen so many times against Arsenal, and they're not putting it right.
Petr Cech looked sort of stunned by that one, but he actually looked angry about the second, because there was a little flash, wasn't there, of dissent, a bit of anger from him. Why so? Let's have a look at that second goal, because at face value, his feet are wrong and he's in the wrong part of the goal and he's made to look a bit silly here, Sean, isn't he? But he was questioning why nobody, and look how many Arsenal bodies are there, got anywhere near Zarate.
Wow, he's got a good bit of space there, and I think that goal doesn't happen against Chelsea for Petr Cech. The only reason is I don't think they have a player that's looking to dribble out there, so that's how that ball was lost. Yeah. And as he's lost it, he's caught Petr Cech off guard, and he's hit it. And Petr Cech looks slightly to be blinded, or blindsided, and he squeezed it in their post.
See, for me, that one, John, I would blame him 100%. That is down. He wouldn't be happy with that. Yes, there could have been closing. Cazorla could have closed him quicker, because the turnover, Chamberlain had it, then lost it. So when you think you're in possession, your team, the handover's quickly. It's hard to close quick. But if we watch that again, I don't know if we can show that again. If you watch Petr Cech, his left foot, his body weight goes.
Again, shall we?
He's reading. Right. He's trying to read. He's going in the other corner, and he actually, his left foot takes off. His body weight's gone that way, and he's got caught on the near side. Let's have a look at it. Look, he thinks Arsenal in possession. Are they really? No, they're not. Now, from behind the goal, we see a body weight of him going to his left, and that's enough at this level to you just can't see it there. It's from behind. This is the angle. Just watch Petr Cech now. Watch his left foot go. He's backwards. His left foot's gone that way. His body's gone to the left, and he can't get back into the near post.
And it looks as though Cazorla, because it happens so quickly, he can't get across that quickly because he's also conscious of the midfielder he's marking. It could be squared to him for a free shot.
Yeah.
Arsene Wenger was wary of singling out Petr Cech. He obviously knows what the player's about, knows his personality, but he was very critical of the rest of his players. Felt that no one really delivered, felt that maybe mentally the attitude wasn't right there. OK, again, Glenn, it's one game. We know Arsenal have it within them. We saw it a couple of seasons ago when they got beaten by Villa and bounced back. But have they got the characters, or do they need to go and buy defenders? Do they need to do something about the problem that you think undermines their whole title hopes?
I still think they need a defender. I'm surprised he hasn't gone and bought a defender. I think Coquelin might, in the end, possibly be the holding player that everyone says that they needed in midfield. I think he's still got to get defensively aware. But for me, they need another centre-half to go on and have an onslaught on this year's league.
We're not going to say anything more about Arsenal's attacking options other than maybe the striking option, because as we turn our attention to Manchester United, who we would bracket as a top-4 contender this season, let's do something a little bit different and let's broaden the chat to strikers at the top-4 contenders. Now, as a result of that, we've decided to put together the 3 most likely strikers that you'd say is 1, 2 and 3 for each of these big 4 clubs. We've gone for Chelsea, Manchester City, Arsenal and Manchester United, just for the time being. Now, Sean, Glenn, my first question to you is, who's got the strongest 3, in your opinion, on paper, and then tell me the weakest 3 of these clubs on paper, if those are the 3 strikers they possess?
The strongest, in my opinion, would be City. I think City have the strongest in terms of Bond is capable of scoring 20 goals and Aguero winners are capable of scoring 20-plus goals. And Sterling, I think my expectation of Sterling is to be hitting around 15. Perhaps may not because of first season and adjusting, may get somewhere around 12.
Weakest?
The weakest, I'd look at probably Arsenal.
OK, fine. Glenn?
Weakest?
No, strongest
Man City, I'd agree there with Sean, without a doubt. Because I think also that Boney will give them so many goals for Toure and for midfield players. He lays balls on, he's fantastic like that. So get goals from midfield from those strike force.
I was surprised. Let me tell you this first, Glenn. I was surprised Sean said Arsenal and not Manchester United.
Well, I'll go Man United. Yeah, my weakest, looking on that on paper, would be Manchester United. Although I do like Hernandez. I think if Hernandez was given 30 games in a team, I think he could score a hell of a lot of goals. His movement is second to none. We haven't seen it. Even when the poor lad went to Madrid, they didn't really play him from the start. He didn't feel as if he's in the team. And United's the same. I'm surprised no one's coming in to buy him, another club. And there's a lot of clubs outside the top 4. Yeah. We were saying, Sean, off air, there's so many teams that need strikers. What is it this year? Every team needs a striker.
Are Arsenal and maybe Manchester United both chasing a striker, maybe even the same striker? Which of the 2 most desperately needs a striker? If it's Benzema, for example, who would you say would be the most likely?
I think Benzema would suit Arsenal, but for me, Pedro for Manchester United. Right. If he ends up there, for me, he's one of those players that you think he's a winger, but he drives on through the middle, he ends up in the penalty area and scores goals.
Look, last night, scores big goals.
He's a bit like Sanchez. I mean, we missed out Sanchez there for Arsenal. I'd put Sanchez in that little...
again, we were trying to pick strikers. I mean, because that's the thing. Sanchez. You might argue, guys, you might even argue that everybody could do with a striker. Haven't we just spoken about Chelsea that suggested that they could do with somebody? City, you seem to feel maybe are OK.
No, I think City... I don't know about you, Sean.
Yes, City do.
I think City need a striker.
Because we're not certain that Bonner will score you 20 because he's just moved to the club. The likelihood is with his ability, he should be scoring 18 to 20 goals.
Let's drag this back to Manchester United, really, here, because we need to talk very much about their title aspirations here. Now, OK, again, it's one game. We had a look at Memphis, who struggled to do an awful lot. I had a brief look at Schweinsteiger. I had a long look at Schneiderlin. Don't know if you learned anything new about him. We had a look at the goalkeeper who did well, but David De Gea, obviously, has just been named in Manchester United's Champions League squad, so presumably, if they get things sorted out, he remains #1 in goal, does he, for you?
Yes, of course. I mean, obviously, when the window shuts, if he's still at Manchester United, you mark my words, he'd be in that green jersey for them, no doubt about it. He obviously wants to move to Spain, and the club are saying, well, if you want to move, that's fine, but you're going to have to pay the money the top dollar money that we need for you, and perhaps you go. If not, you get on with it. And the lad obviously mentally isn't right.
Can't be healthy for them. I mean, that shot of the 3 goalkeepers the other day wasn't the happiest of shots, was it? And people made a great deal of play of that one. Glenn, it's not ideal. I'll stay with you on this. This is not ideal for Manchester United going into the season with the manager admitting that his goalkeeper wasn't quite right, because they're a work in progress still, aren't they?
Of course not. And in front of them, he's got to sort out his centre-halves. So you've got a goalkeeper situation, the centre-halves, you know, he put Smalling in at the last minute. Jones had played right the way through the season. They say Jones has got an illness now or a problem. So, yes, he's got a problem at the back there, like he did last year. Had forever problems at the back forward level and the back 3 that he tried to play. But we see these 3 keepers, and they're not happy bunnies at all, are they? They're all having their say now. But at the end of the day, if you're going to win the league, you've got to have a good, solid goalkeeper behind you.
How seriously do you take Manchester United? Because if they can do what they've done and go and get the likes of Bastian Schweinsteiger, boy, what a player to have coming to this league, given that all he's won. But is he still the player he was? Is he somebody who's going to be able to pull the strings and orchestrate and turn Manchester United into title winners?
Well, he's a World Cup winner, so he's seen it all. He understands. I think the German league is probably the best league you can come from to come into the English Premiership. So the physicality of the league, he will adjust to, he would know, and he'll be very sound. I think he's a great forward when you're talking about Carrick, when he has injuries or he's out injured. You've got an experienced, top-quality player to come in at times and do a job. So I think that's a very good sign. And yes, he is aging on the older side, but all that experience he will use.
OK. Manchester United, I'm going to ask you to draw some conclusions in a short while in terms of who fills the top 4 places, not necessarily what order, but we've been talking largely about strikers, and we Liverpool fans out there will be saying, but you haven't talked about us just yet in the context of the top 4 or even the strikers. Well, they could fit both of them, because as far as Liverpool are concerned, whether or not they fit the top 4, we'll discuss. But they have gone out and got £32.5 million worth of striker, and one of the best we've seen in recent seasons in this country. We didn't see a lot of Benteke at Stoke for Liverpool, but have they got themselves a good striker, a great striker even?
Yes, they have. They've got a focal point because they like to, you know, move the ball about, shift it about, and it gives them that option to go long, go direct, and Benteke can actually get a hold of balls, and he's really good in the air from crosses. Now, you know, will Liverpool be the team to get the balls wide and produce those crosses? They're more like the team to create opportunities by sliding balls through. But all in all, Benteke is a good player, and I think he was a better player in a bad team. Now he's in a really good team. Will he still be this better player?
And that's the nub of this one, isn't it, Glenn? Because obviously we looked at a game in which he had 44 touches at the weekend, not an awful lot in the area, not too many chances, but we also saw them sliding it, as you said, to the feet of Coutinho, who turned and scored. Let's remind ourselves what Benteke can do. Because the big dilemma here is, how do they get the best out of him, as Villa did?
You get crosses in to get the best out of him. He'll do good things with his back to play. He'll hold the ball up, and he'll bring the Liverpool midfield players like Coutinho and Lallana and Firmino into the game. But if you want the best out of him, you get the ball to him in the penalty area, particularly from crosses, past the 18-yard box. If you can get crosses in, I think that's where Liverpool and Brendan might have to just tinker with the way they play and say, look, we brought this fella in. We've got to play to his strengths. When we get it wide, if we're in these wide positions, if it's laid back to a full-back, don't take a touch and we go back across the box. If he's in a good position, get that ball into the penalty area. And I tell you what, if he doesn't score as well, Sean, you'll get the people off the front, your little Coutinhos and your Hendersons and your Lallanas.
Or maybe Ings coming into the team?
Yeah, getting goals off the second ball, off defenders not clearing properly, because he's such a handful. So you might see a different type of dimension, a different type of goal from Liverpool, as well as they'll still play for the eye of the needle goal.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're a work in progress because of the number of signings they've made. Let's say, for example, the likes of Benteke, Firmino, Ings, whoever else it might be, absolutely click right from the get-go. Do you see Liverpool having an opportunity to crack the top 4, to put some pressure on, if one of those 4 that we listed earlier on, you know, doesn't work out this season at all?
Well, they're certainly capable of it, and that's the magical question for Liverpool, is can they put the run of form they put together a couple of seasons ago, where they were playing outstanding football. Because there are a number of players coming in, I tend to think that they won't all gel. I hope they do, because Liverpool are good on the eye when you see them play the way they play. But I think they may just come short, just squeezing in. But if they all perform well, there's a chance they could squeeze in their top 4.
But unfortunately, Brendan Rodgers doesn't have the luxury of time to let them bed. It's got to happen quite soon for Brendan, hasn't it? Because we're into season number 3. Silverware's evaded him, and he needs something, doesn't he?
It probably has got to happen quickly. But I'll tell you one thing he has done shrewdly, John, is he bought early in pre-season.
No.
So he's had a pre-season with them players. A lot of these teams are going to buy between now and the end of the window, and then they're going to have to gel and spend some time. So it might be 6 or 7 games in that you'll be able to judge a team. Whereas I think Liverpool, if they've got off to a good start, if they get another couple of good results, I think they've got Bournemouth at home, is it? The next game, they've got to expect to win that.
Yeah.
They might, they do need a good start.
The home games look very winnable. The 3 points they picked up at Stoke must have helped. What do you make of the rest of the signings? I mean, Klein, Milner, I mean, it's exciting, isn't it? Liverpool fans believe, don't they?
I think they've bought really well from the midfield and up. Klein's a good fullback. I worry about their Achilles heel is in centre-half positions. I think last year they conceded too many goals, and they're the only team, I think, that could maybe sneak in the top 4 from them top 4 that happened there last year. But for me, defensively, away from home, they were found wanting. They've got to improve.
And they very much relied on Coutinho, and you mentioned it earlier on. I mean, Coutinho, with the ability to turn and do things like this, that 3 points eased a bit of pressure ahead of a tough run of away fixtures. And it's worth looking at again, that, isn't it?
It is. I mean, he's always having these sort of strikes, at least 2 or 3 a season. And you would imagine Mark Hughes would have sat down with the team and said, look, in 10 yards outside the box, we can allow him to be facing goal. So if we're in the position to be goal side, we stay goal side. Sidwell's trying to pinch that. He's rolled him, a perfect roll, and as we know, he's just put it right in the top corner. It's a quality strike by him.
OK, guys, let's get to the nitty-gritty, if it will. First things first, do you see Liverpool cracking the top 4, Glenn?
I'd like to say yes. I just felt like I've just gone into the reasons why I think they won't is the centre-half positions and the conceding of goals,
OK.
But I think offensively they're going to be exciting this year, yeah.
All right. Do you still feel, Sean, that Liverpool maybe not quite? You know where I'm leading? I want to know a bit about the top 4. I'm trying to draw out of you some kind of a prediction here as to what we might see. Don't know if you're going to go for an order. You ready to pick a top 4 for me?
For me, I think it would be the same 4. I would edge towards City, but in saying that, in no particular order, Arsenal, City, Chelsea, and Man United. And I think
so. You lean towards City right now.
Yes.
OK, fine.
Yeah.
Glenn, I can understand, and this is interesting, that when we spoke about this earlier, you said you don't want to pick an order 1, 2, 3, 4 for the simple reason that the transfer window's open. Does that mean that, and I'm judging from what I've heard from you today, you really think that some, if not all, of these top 4 are going to do substantial business or need to do substantial business?
I think they need to, John. I think they will in the striker's position, and if they can bring the right, with a manager's head on, when that window shuts, that's what you've got. And you don't know if Man United went and got Bale from, left field, or Ronaldo who was unhappy at Madrid, then you can say, hang on a minute. Man United now, I'm putting them in a different...
See, I'm not letting this go. I'm like a terrier.
Exactly. So,
I'm like a terrier with a boner. I'm not letting this one go. If they make the right buys...
But who are the right buys? You tell me who the right buys are and I'll tell you.
You tell me. If a club makes the right buys, who wins
I believe the top 4 again. What order they'll be, I think it'll be closer. I think it'll be really quite exciting this year, in the sense that I don't think it'll be over with...
Are you saying United could win it with the right buy?
No.
OK.
No, I think...
And then there were 3.
Yeah, so but those top 4, I think United can get in the top 4 as they were last year, and the same 4. Liverpool, for me, I don't see Everton or Southampton or Tottenham or anyone but Liverpool maybe sneaking in there.
I'm doing this by a process of deduction and elimination. Right, again, a question for you. With the right buys, and it seems like you've got massive reservations about Arsenal's defence and maybe striker, with the right buys, could Arsenal win the league?
I differ with Glenn on this. I differ from the point that I think if they had a 25-goal season striker, because I don't think Arsenal play the way it's about, keeping clean sheets as Mourinho does with Chelsea. I think he's happy to win a game 2-0 or 3-1 or 4-2, as opposed to Chelsea. We know that they could win a game 1-0, 2-1. Right. They're excellent at that.
So you're not giving up on them, Glenn. We're a little bit tight for time. But what I'm going to do now, I'm going to suggest that although you still give Arsenal the benefit of the doubt, you probably don't. I suspect we're right back where we started, guys, with City-Chelsea. I suspect that's where we effectively are. The 2 most likely winners of the title,
Between winning it, yes, I believe that. And I think City are going to be closer this year than last year.
They meet this weekend. We've spoken about it at length already. It could be 5 points. That's an incentive for City, even at this early stage. It might not amount to anything. But what happens this weekend for you, Glenn? Even long-range forecast, what happens?
I think City will win. I really do. It's come at this, you know, at home as well. The fixture, as I said, has come at a great time for them. Chelsea are not playing as well. There's a lot of doubts at the moment. Costa's injury, the doctor, was she going to be there? Is she not going to be there? They're not playing well. They're not playing well at the moment. And they haven't done all pre-seasons. And I think City will go there and be ruthless. And then Pellegrini will wind them up. Company will wind them up. You saw how wound up he was when he scored his goal. I can only see a City win. I really do.
City for Glenn? City?
Well, I think City can win, but they have to be cautious and cagey, because whenever City have actually have, you know, Zabaleta or Kolarov or Clichy, whoever's on the left side, bombing and leaving ourselves exposed, Chelsea have countered and been able to go and win those games 1-0 or 2-1. When we played against Chelsea and actually played more cagey, having a fullback stay, we've been able to win the game. So
softly, cautious, got a chance. Sean, thank you very much for that and everything you brought us today on Football Today. Glenn, always a pleasure having you along. And thank you very much for joining us. So there we've got to it in the end, a prediction out of the guys. And one thing we do know is that there's a huge 90 minutes ahead this weekend at the Etihad. We also know when these two sides have met down the years, they've produced some great results. He's looking forward to one this weekend. Goodbye now.
Were worthy champions, they really were. I think we focused on the back end of the season when they weren't functioning as well and they weren't playing the pretty football and the attractive football that they had in the first 6 months up until Christmas, I thought, and just after. They were playing some sensational football with Fabregas and Costa, the new signings, Matic coming in. They had a wonderful balance to their game. They were hard to beat. Yet they had what I call the three little inside forwards that all could play in there, all functioning, and Fabregas pulling the strings. I thought overall they thoroughly deserved to win the league last year.
They deserved to win it. They cruised to it. But even as early as this summer, Jose Mourinho, Sean, was already saying it is not going to be as easy this time around. In fact, he said, perhaps owing to the greater democracy because of all the money, he said it's going to be tougher. Whoever wins the league, whether it's Chelsea or anyone, is going to lose more games, not win as many games. We can illustrate this. We've got a graphic here that shows exactly how things could change here. Now, in terms of the last 10 seasons in this league, the most wins by a championship winner was Chelsea back in 2005-06 with 29. The fewest games won by a team that went on to win the title was that 2010-11 Manchester United with 23. So there's a 6-game win disparity there. In terms of defeats, 6 defeats is the most that's been suffered by Chelsea and Manchester City in those respective seasons. The fewest was Chelsea when they cruised it, of course, last time out. So why was he saying this? Was he genuinely saying, because the likes of even Bournemouth or Newcastle can go and spend what they've spent, it's going to be tougher? Or are these early mind games?
it is going to be tougher. And he's right in that, because everyone is added to the squad. Probably Chelsea is added very little. When I think of who they brought, no one's come strikingly to mind. But certainly from City's point of view, that perhaps De Bruyne may be coming in. So obviously that's exciting. We know Sterling's come in, and I think he'll add to it. So, and you look at United, the few players they've brought in. So it's certainly going to be, more interesting and more challenging for whoever goes to win.
What is interesting as well, Glenn, is that he said all that, and with Jose, obviously, every pronouncement, you kind of, you read between the lines, don't you? And you're trying to second-guess what he's saying there. He very soon after that started talking about, yes, I've signed a new deal, but I'm angry because we've stood still. And to paraphrase, if you stand still in this league, you go backwards and all that. Did you have a sense over the summer that you were waiting for Chelsea to do something and it didn't happen? I
felt they weren't going to buy, too many players coming in. I felt that they really did their buying well last season with Fabregas.
Certainly with the players that they buy and the money they buy them for, it looks good value.
Let's have a little look, shall we? And let's remind ourselves, of course, that Jose is looking to do something that nobody in this country has done since 2009, and that's retain the title. Manchester United, the last team to do that. So, a summer of relative uncertainty. And for Jose to come out and say, we have stood still, it wasn't an ideal preparation for the first game of the season. And Glenn, that first game of the season on Saturday evening against an ambitious, adventurous, talented Swansea side. And boy, Chelsea had a few problems, didn't they?
They certainly did. And you said it, they are a talented side. They can cause anyone. They went to Man United and won first day of the season last year with a similar type of squad. They play some wonderful football. They've got a lovely system. and they've got confidence flowing through them. You can see they've had a good pre-season. And Chelsea, let's face it, have not had a good pre-season. It's been stop-start. They came back, a lot of players, later because of the amount of football that they'd had during the summer. So, you know, I think Swansea going into this game were actually better prepared. And Mourinho's got to look at himself and his team at the moment on the pitch, not so much off it. He's got to get them players functioning. Matic and Fabregas not playing anywhere near like they did when they
this
started
is a bizarre
last year.
thing to say. I heard a couple of pundits say they look leggy. First game of the season.
Yeah.
Looked leggy, but you can understand it. They did. They looked a little bit like they did in the run-in last season at times, didn't they, Sean?
Well, could it be the credit that Swansea looked really fresh and up for it and perhaps underestimated what Swansea were about? Because I thought Swansea played a superb game, the way they moved it about. They really got at Chelsea, and it surprised me watching it, but I thought Swansea played a superb game.
Coming back to this point about whether it was, you're absolutely right, the freshness of Swansea or a certain degree of jadedness about them. Let's isolate two players. Now, Jefferson Montero, and we've seen him do this before, he can tear anybody apart, but it just happened to be Branislav Ivanovic who he completely left trailing in his wake. Now, Ivanovic is a player who played an awful lot last year, Glenn, and he's asked to get up and down. Yep. Towards the end of last season, he struggled a bit, and he struggled here, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And this fella is a superb winger. He's he's almost old school winger. But the good thing about him, a winger playing in Swansea, and you've done it, you've seen it with Sinclair and Dyer over the years, they earn, because they keep the ball and they play so well with the ball, look, they earn him space so that he's always facing the fullback. He's always up against the fullback, attacking them, and it was the same for all the wingers at Swansea over the years. This fella can go either around the outside. Again, look at the way they're keeping the ball, they're making the 5th, 6th pass. Fullbacks have to tuck round like Ivanovic has.
Why couldn't Chelsea cope with him, though, Glenn? Chelsea faced good wingers with respect to Montero, particularly in European football. Why were Chelsea given a... Manchester City host Chelsea at the Etihad this weekend in the season's first title race-shaping clash. And even now, the early signs are that Chelsea will face a tougher battle this time around.
And so, today for Chelsea, May becomes history. Champions League! 22 minutes into the start of their defence. 1-1! And the champions are pegged back at home. Their one-goal lead quickly re-established. The dread high drama on the bridge. Touré, and it's spun in. Back to Touré, beautifully worked. Super goal. He's made that count. And City have guided themselves to the top of the first Premier League table.
Yes, hello there, and a very warm welcome to a very special Football Today, the first of this kind of the season in which we focus on one game. This weekend, Sunday at the Etihad, a huge clash between the top two from last season, a game that could see Manchester City some 5 points clear of the reigning champions of England, or it may not, as the case may be. We're here to discuss that today. The we in question, well, the former Chelsea and England manager Glenn Hoddle is with us. Glenn, good to have you here. And next to him, we have got a man who was the leading goalscorer 4 seasons in a row for Manchester City, scoring more than 100 goals in his time there. Sean Gota is here as well. Gentlemen, great to have you here. Glenn, first things first, for the purposes of this show, we're looking at a heavyweight clash this weekend. In your opinion, are these two, Chelsea and Manchester City, the two most likely title winners?
I think they are, John, yes. I think it was the 1 and 2 from last year. People are saying about Arsenal and possibly United improving, having a better chance this year. Well, I don't see them challenging these two. I think it will be fought between the two heavyweights, as you say.
OK, Sean, let's have a little think about what makes these two the most likely. The money, the power, the know-how when it comes to winning titles?
I think it's all three. They have the money, they have the know-how, and they have the quality. So when you look at both teams, they certainly got match winners when you look at Aguero and Diego Costa. So certainly it's those three things.
Let's talk a bit about Glenn, Chelsea to start off with, as the incumbents, as the title winners last season, the reigning champions. First things first, it's easy to do this with the benefit of hindsight and to revise our opinion. Just how good were they? How much of a challenge did they have last year? How much of a worthy champion was Chelsea?
I think they will him to show the crowd, to show his teammates, and to make himself comfortable with the manager. He's got to earn that, but the manager has also got to put him in there and give him some opportunities.
But also, is Jose Mourinho right to say that under these new, slightly more constrained times financially, that he's not being given quite as much backing? Let's illustrate that. Let's show how things have changed. Now, of course, in his first 5 windows, look at that. The first spell he was there, that was when Chelsea were the big hitters in this league, when that Abramovich-funded spend was going and going and going. £192.5 million in signings, 53 sold, net spend of 139. Now, the first 5 transfer windows, up until this point, remember, because this one is still open, first 5 windows, there, 32.1 million net spend. So over 100 million down in terms of a net spend. Yes, the numbers are bigger, but that's a product of the changed economic times, Glenn. But the reality is, the times have changed at Chelsea.
Well, I think they have. I think it's been muted that they want to... they've spent a lot on the academy. They want to look at academy players. They chip a lot of players out on loan, but that's for experience. That's not because they're not good enough at the moment to play for Chelsea. It's to get the experience, to come back, and then the manager assesses them, say, can they get into our first team squad?
Is it also a money-making exercise, Glenn? Because one of the interesting things about the players they have out is they're monitoring them closely and they're looking at the players and they're actually appreciating as assets as well. So it is part of the new Chelsea model.
Listen, when you're Chelsea, Man City, Man United, the top teams, it's very, very difficult to get youngsters through your academy and into your first team. You have to... Normally, it's your Rooneys or your Ferdinands or your Owens or your... The cream comes to the top at that age group. That's the problem with the academy levels, that they spend a hell of a lot of money and they produce one player possibly over 10 years, some clubs. It's hard to get in these teams, so they have to go out on loan, and Chelsea's policy is the right policy, but I think as a club, they're looking at it differently. We want to groom some of our own. Look what John Terry done for us over the years.
Yeah. But also, you know, at a time when we seem to always want it both ways, we should be applauding Chelsea, shouldn't we? Because let's take a look at what they've got for Lukaku, Luiz, Mata. Something like 120 million in. Even De Bruyne. De Bruyne was bought in for Chelsea for less than 7 million and sold for 18. So that part of it's working. But this doesn't help Jose Mourinho, because ultimately we know he wants to win the league, doesn't he?
He wants to win the league, and it depends on how you look at it, because if you talk about the English game, which is a whole separate thing, how many English players are actually getting in the team and starting? So that becomes a whole separate issue. But
Costa, great buy, and Matic coming back in. So I felt that they would add to it, but not stringently. I'm not going right 2 or 3 more players. I think there's players in there that now almost had a period of time with Mourinho have got to perform better. Cuadrado is one. He has got to get a chance and go and play and show what he can do. In Italy, he was outstanding. You know, and for Colombia, he's outstanding. But so there's players already in there that I think he's got to get more out of. They definitely need, I think, full-back position, without a doubt. And the thing is, the clubs down the bottom now, people like Bournemouth coming into the league, it is going to be more difficult for them. They have to move on because these clubs now have got some money. They've all got good money. They all can buy. I mean, Bournemouth have brought 8 new players in. Yeah. You know, it's not like the old days when you get up and you play the squad that's got you up. So all these clubs now have got the money to build their own squads.
And Chelsea are bottom, or were bottom, of the net spend. Curious that, wasn't it, with Newcastle United top. The other thing that's interesting, Sean, as well, I mean, Glenn was talking about a left-back, and with Felipe Luis going, it looks like it's Abdul Babarahman from Augsburg, most likely the target for them. But Chelsea, as a rule, have changed, haven't they? They're not splashing the cash in the way that perhaps we've seen Manchester City do more recently. The model at Chelsea is changing.
yes, it is, and probably one of the good things from Chelsea's point of view, because you can purchase 8 players as one or two clubs may have done, but will all those players gel? And the fact that Chelsea have spent little is less of a worry. But as he said himself, they've got to move on. They've got to improve their squad and get more out of players like Cuadrado, get more out of him. And other players, so it's certainly be more challenging for them.
That's an interesting point you make, and before we move on to illustrate what is happening there, Cuadrado's a very good case in point, because Cuadrado, Glenn, follows Salah. Salah was a player who'd hurt Chelsea when he was playing at Basel, obviously, and a player that they feared, yet they couldn't seem to find a way to make him work. Is there a little pressure, do you think, internally on the likes of Jose Mourinho and his assistant, his coaching staff, to say, hang on, we'll give you these players, You've got to get something out of them.
Yeah, you've got to do that as a coach. And the last thing a player, you'll never see the best of a player if he doesn't think the manager really is putting his hat on him and putting him in the team and giving him the opportunities. Salas didn't get that opportunity. He's a decent player. You'll see him move on like he has. He'll probably do very well again. But when you go to one of the bigger clubs, City or Chelsea or Man United or Arsenal, you've got to go in there and make your presence has to be as much as anything, as well as your talents. This lad never had that. Cuadrado could be the similar case. Unless he gets enough game time,